Edward Cabrera got traded, plus we'll discuss tough players to rank up next on our first Kokomo Friday of 2026.
Alcantara, Soroka, you look so good in Boca. Peralta, Manoa, bounce back for Aaron Nola. Giolito, Castillo, Yoshida, Mosuzuka.
Carlo and Fado, value so high, but ADP so low. Frank Clubs hit some kind of joke. Now let's get on with the show.
Happy Kokomo Friday! We are so back. Welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on January 9th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, our full rankings and auction values will be published next week on Tuesday, January 13th. So we've been in the lab. Who are the toughest players to rank for 2026? We shall discuss. But first, Chris, your Marlins were busy, and they made a pretty fun trade on Wednesday afternoon. Lots of different angles for fantasy, so we will start there. Then we'll get into the tough players to rank a little bit later on. Edward Cabrera traded over to the Cubs in exchange for 3 prospects, outfielder Owen Caissie and infielders Christian Hernandez and Edgardo De Leon. Cabrera turns 28 in April and is under team control for 3 more years. Very interesting pitcher. He's clearly very talented, has an extensive injury history. We didn't see him perform consistently enough until last season when he was very good. 3.53 ERA, 123 whip, nearly 10K per 9. Got those walks down as well. Chris, how much did you move up? I'm assuming you did move up Edward Cabrera in your rankings with this trade over to the Cubs.
Not that much. It's clearly a better situation. The Cubs have arguably the best defense in baseball, probably the best infield defense as well. They give him a better chance of getting wins. All of that is true. And so it is a better situation. It's also Edward Cabrera. And his biggest obstacle has always been himself. And so I just don't think this fundamentally changes.
I'm relieved to hear you say that.
Sidebar on this one. It's Edward Cabrera. Why did Edward Cabrera suddenly become this big trade chip that people thought was people were like, well, that's a disappointing return. It's for Edward Cabrera, I
thought it was a great return.
Yeah. It's not a great
famous Charizard Edward Cabrera.
Yeah, I have questions about Owen Caissie. I think there are reasonable concerns about the fact that this guy got to AAA pretty early on in 2024, and the Cubs just gave him no chance in basically a year and a half. I think there are reasons to believe that the Cubs just don't have a lot of faith in Owen Caissie, and look, the Cubs know Owen Caissie better than anyone. So, I think that should factor into your view of Owen Caissie moving forward. But it's also Edward Cabrera. I don't think this was a guy who had a ton of value. There are reports that the Yankees were interested but scared off by the medicals. I think it's fine for both sides. I think the Cubs got a talented, cheap pitcher, and that the cheap part is very important to the Cubs at this point. But he's got to throw strikes. He's got to stay healthy. I don't have a lot of faith in him to do either of those things. So yeah, the defense helps. Yeah, the ballpark helps. Yeah, the team that's backing him up helps. It should be probably not a 90-win team, but probably an 85-plus win team, I would say, for the Cubs. But the primary issue for Edward Cabrera is Edward Cabrera. And going to the Cubs probably doesn't fix that. I can't say for sure. Maybe they have some tweaks to his delivery, but this is a guy who went on the IL in September with a sprained elbow and has been on the IL 9 times in his major league career.
9 times.
9 times. So I didn't really move him up.
Yeah, I am valid. I feel validated hearing you say this because I had the same reaction to what is what is all the fuss over Edward Cabrera? And I tweeted something about it. It got a big reaction, both in terms of likes and responses, and and I saw some headlines saying Cubs acquire frontline pitcher Edward Cabrera, and I'm like, in what world is Edward Cabrera a frontline pitcher? I realize he just had the best season of his career. It was a breakout in some ways, and we could get into the changes that went behind it. I think that's, at least for baseball dorks like us, listening to fantasy baseball podcasts in early January, it's pretty well documented. You know, he started throwing a sinker more, that four-seamer that he had trouble controlling. He
lowered his arm slot.
Lowered the arm slot, which helped the secondary stuff play out, which was already pretty good. So there were changes he made that allowed him to have a breakout season. And yet he broke out to a 3.53 ERA and a 1.23 WHIP, which is pretty good. Good. I can use that, but not like even borderline ace material. And then, okay, probably, nearly 10K per nine, guy who's capable of missing bats. We've always known that about Edward Cabrera. But he threw, you mentioned the 9 IL stints in his career. The 137 and 2/3 innings he just threw was a career high across, 5 seasons, some of them up and down between the majors and minors, granted, but 90 career starts, basically. I'm rounding up, but 90 career starts for Edward Cabrera. And the most innings he hasn't even gotten to 140. So it's almost like a Tyler Glasnow health record here, but without the success record of a Tyler Glasnow. Really just one season, this most recent season, where he was good but not great. So are the changes that he made last year going to stick, first of all? Because he could backslide. Like, the arm slot could change again. Like, the sinker, maybe he'll struggle to control that now. It's not like he has a long history of doing the things he did right last year. It's not like he has a history of doing that over and over again, and that makes it, you question how likely it is to continue, or at least it should. And then, how many innings can you honestly expect from him? Every pitcher is injury prone, and so I don't like to think of a pitcher as safe in terms of innings. But when the injury history is as extensive as it is for Edward Cabrera, I think you have to count it against him. So for me, he's 59th. I think it was like 64th among starting pitchers prior to the trade. He is oriented more for ground balls. It's a great infield defense in Chicago, not to mention probably a more competitive team. It is an upgrade, but I just think the commentary surrounding this trade it runs the risk of inflating Edward Cabrera's draft status beyond what's reasonable. He should be a usable part of your fantasy rotation all season long. That is my expectation for him. But there are both performance and durability questions, major ones.
I kind of view him as like a less projectable Gavin Williams. Like Gavin Williams, except I'm even more concerned about how sustainable the success is and how likely he is to throw any kind of impactful number of innings.
I have him right next to Mackenzie Gore. I feel like those guys are really similar, right? It's just
I think Mackenzie Gore is significantly more talented, actually. I actually like, if Mackenzie Gore was a top 20 starting pitcher, I would be surprised, but I wouldn't be shocked. I would be shocked if Edward Cabrera got there.
I don't know, man. We had a stretch in the middle of the season when Cabrera was healthy and when he was really going. It was like a 10-12 start stretch where he was just churning out quality start after quality start. And he kind of was in that, top 40, top 36 starting pitcher conversation.
But we had that with Gore, too.
I think
he was higher.
We moved Gore into top 20 discussion,
Yeah, but I mean, Gore very typically has had these huge fall offs. And look, they both have their flaws. I totally get that. Don't disagree with a word that you guys said. I do think I have a little bit more faith in the Cubs kind of getting the best out of Cabrera. And again, just that defense behind him. He gets a lot of ground balls when balls are put in play against him. And having one of maybe the best defense in baseball behind you, obviously, can only help Edward Cabrera. So I do like that aspect of it for him quite a bit. The updated Cubs rotation: Matthew Boyd, Shota Imanaga, Cade Horton, Edward Cabrera, Jameson Tyone, and Justin Seal returning at some point this season. The NFBC ADP over the past 2 weeks for Cabrera is right at 200. It's a fun range of pitchers. He's right around Shane Baz and Mackenzie Gore, who I just mentioned, and Chris Bubich. Would you take Cabrera over any of those names? Baz, Gore, Bubich?
I'd take him over Baz and Gore, but we've talked before about how Chris Bubich by early ADP seems criminally underrated. So I don't think he belongs in that same conversation. Bubich, Cabrera, I was with you actually, Frank. I had Cabrera and Gore back to back prior to the trade, and so now I've got a little separation between the two of them, with Cabrera's circumstances improving.
Yeah,
but
I've got Gore ahead.
Okay,
I think Baz and Cabrera are very close for me. Let me see. Cabrera's a little ahead of Baz, it looks like.
I have Cabrera 202, so I think I'm right with ADP there.
For the Cubs, before we move on to the Marlins side of things, with Owen Caissie gone, it does seem like Moises Ballesteros will get a pretty fair chance to be at least a strong side platoon at DH this season. Unfortunately, doesn't have catcher eligibility. I would say maybe he can work his way into getting that, but the Cubs already have a bunch.
He made one appearance.
He did one appearance.
Yeah.
So that gives me some hope that they're not totally abandoning him as a catcher. I don't think he'll ever be the catcher for the Cubs, but could he be a bat first backup while playing a lot of DH? I think that's possible for Bob.
I think you need an injury.
Yeah, but he is util only just to start the season, so keep that in mind. But he's a prospect that can hit and maybe, decent power there. So definitely a name to watch in spring training. Definitely a name, I think, for deeper leagues to know Moises Ballesteros.
I moved him up. And I wanted to follow up on Owen Caissie, too, because, we could look at it a couple ways. The Cubs were willing to part with him to get Edward Cabrera. But my understanding from what I've read is the Marlins have coveted Owen Caissie for a while. And
they had agreed to a trade last offseason for Jesus Luzardo, centered around Owen Caissie, that the Cubs backed out of because of medicals.
Yeah. And, obviously the Cubs were in the playoff race, and I'm sure the Marlins, if they got the right return, would have made a deal at the deadline. Mm-hmm. And so it seems like the Cubs resisted moving Caissie until now. So the Marlins coveted Caissie, and the Marlins have had a good record of acquiring hitters, like overflow hitters from other organizations recently, with Kyle Stowers being the most prominent example.
Marcy.
So I'm pretty bullish on Caissie, and I think he's going to be a prime target for me in 5 outfielder leagues. I would imagine he'll have the inside track on a starting job this spring. I think there's huge power there. There are some strikeout concerns, but it's not like he was Spencer Jones striking out 35% of the time at AAA. It was like 28%. And when you dig deeper on the plate discipline numbers, the chase wasn't too bad.
Yep, the constituent parts are pretty strong.
Wasn't that bad. So I think we saw him actualize the power this past year. Owen Caissie, good plate discipline. I have high hopes for him.
Yeah, I think when I think of like a comp for him, one that came to mind was Taylor Ward. Kind of that 3 true outcomes guy, not going to steal bases, but you can live with a lower batting average if he gets to that 30+ homer territory. And I do think Owen Caissie has that skill set, 92 mile per hour average exit velocity, 113 max. His skill set actually looks a lot like Kyle Stowers, which, Frank, I see you put in the notes. I've seen a lot of people.
What I thought,
and I think Peter Bendix, actually, I saw a quote from Peter Bendix where he basically said the same thing. And so he's going to get the chance. I don't think he's necessarily a superstar, but Owen Caissie, the only thing is there are actually quite a few. I'm working on sleepers. We're going to do sleepers, breakouts, and busts 1.0 next week, and I'm sleepers on Monday. And there's a lot of outfielders in like the 250+ range of ADP who are young. Like that seems to be where we're sticking, like Cam Smith and Chase DeLauder and Justin Crawford. A lot of guys that I like a lot, but I do think Carson Benj is in like the 350, 400 range. So I think Owen Caissie's definitely in that mix. And I would say in 12-team roto leagues should probably be drafted as a bench piece.
I like Caissie more than all those guys, with the exception of maybe Carson Binge. Like, I like Binge more as a prospect, but I also think Binge is the least likely of those to have a job out of spring training.
If you look at
I think he's like almost guaranteed, actually. I mean, we got to see what the rest of the Mets offseason looks like, but
they like him a lot.
There's 2 spots for him.
Yeah. NFBC Draft Champions ADP over the past 2 weeks, Owen Caissie was 454, outfielder 109 before this trade. Obviously, he's going to climb up quite a bit. I put here, I could see him getting up into like that 300 to 325 range, which puts him right around guys like Dylan Beavers, Chase DeLauder, names you mentioned, Chris, as other young outfielders that were high-end prospects and have a decent opportunity this upcoming season as well. For the rest of the Marlins side of this trade, Cabrera gone. This opens up a spot in their rotation. So Roster Resource put Max Meyer in there. He's returning from hip surgery. He had that in July. It requires 6 to 8 months to recover. So it's close whether or not he's going to be ready and, whether or not he'll actually pitch well enough in spring training to earn that opportunity. But, man, if one of the prospects gets a chance here, Robbie Snelling or Thomas White, and I only bring that up because we have team previews coming out next week. More on that a little bit later on. These short team previews. I interviewed Craig Mish, who's a Miami Marlins insider. He brought up Thomas White and said the Marlins brass has not shot down the possibility of Thomas White being in the rotation on opening day. So just wanted to mention that.
And he's a monster. Like, Thomas White is really, really exciting. If he can if he can have just decent control, I think he's going to be a really, really good pitcher at the major league level. He had a 39% strikeout rate as a 20-year-old last season and got to AAA. Only made 2 starts at AAA, struggled with his control, but despite walking a lot of guys, he had a 25% K- walk ratio. So I think it would be kind of silly to skip over Robbie Snelling, who is another guy who got to AAA, I think, in 2024.
He made
1 start at AAA in 2024 and then got there last year.
And what were his numbers at AAA last year?
Ridiculous. 127 ERA.
Robbie Snelling.
He was so good.
Yeah, we were talking. Snelling. I know throughout September, I was talking like, every time a change happened in the Marlins rotation, I was like, this is Robbie Snelling's ticket. And it never happened. But like, he should have a spot in this rotation coming out of spring training because there's clearly nothing more for him to accomplish at AAA. I do think Thomas White is the better prospect. Thomas White is my top ranked pitching prospect who hasn't debuted yet. There are 3 big ones ahead of him who have, but like, White is really good. I just think Robbie Snelling is more of a finished product and he's really good himself. And I think he definitely deserves to be a sleeper now that Edward Cabrera is removed. And, I'm speaking glowingly here of Owen Caissie and Robbie Snelling. And of course, the Marlins had some interesting pieces carrying over from last year too. A lot has to go right, but I could see them competing this past year. I could see
the Marlins weren't eliminated last year until the final weekend of the season. Just want to point that out.
I think they also had like a minus 80 run differential.
You had a minus 80 run differential.
Thinking ahead to the bold predictions episode we'll do right before the season, I'm sure. Like, I'm already kind of, and bold predictions. We say things that are meant to sound kind of nutty and don't believe to our core, but it's within the realm of possibility. I'm kind of floating the idea of the Marlins make the playoffs and the Cubs don't.
Ooh, yeah, that would be pretty spicy. Just want to wrap this up. I agree what you guys have said about both of these pitching prospects here. I am really excited about Robbie Snelling. I think he will get the first opportunity here. You mentioned, Scott, he's a much more finished product than Thomas White. He went 6+ innings in 14 of 25 starts in the minors last year. That's not normal.
That's rare
for pitching prospects to do. So he kind of has like this big frame and they trust him in terms of his workload and throwing innings. So I am in. He gets ground balls, interesting lefty. He's got good stuff. Like I am very excited about Robbie Snelling getting an opportunity potentially heading into opening day, being in that Marlins rotation. Programming alert, I just mentioned this, but for the first time in FBT history, we have a team preview series starting next week. It's called On the Beat. These are shorter episodes, 10 to 12 minutes long, much like the FBT Express episodes we usually do, where we got a beat writer or TV personality from each team in baseball to come in, answer some big questions, give us a sleeper and a breakout. Those will be released daily, starting on Monday all the way up until the start of spring training in mid-February, even on the weekend. So Monday through Sunday, you're getting an extra podcast in your feed, 10 to 12 minutes, one team preview per day. That will be out on YouTube and in your audio podcast feed as well. Let's take our first break. When we return, the toughest players to rank in 2026. We'll discuss right after this.
The new era of UFC on Paramount Plus comes out swinging. The highlight machine collides with the Liverpool Phenom, and the Hall of Famer returns to take on the Bantamweight champion. UFC 324, Saturday, January 24th, only on Paramount Plus.
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball today. Toughest players to rank in 2026, and we're just going to cycle through here. We have 5 of these each, so 15 players. We'll see if we can get to all of them. Scott, you are up first honestly, the free square on the board, George Springer. 36-year-old coming off a near career year. I mean, is there much else to add? He was the 11th best player in Roto, 3.8 fantasy points per game, tied for 6th best among all hitters. And what makes it harder is that the StatCast numbers back it all up, Scott, and we're just left here trying to figure out what do we do with him in 2026.
Yeah, I think you'll notice a theme with my choices here for hardest player to rank. Mostly with rankings, you're assessing how good a player is, and it's kind of straightforward. But with the players that I find difficult to rank are the ones who have some other variable or maybe even multiple variables that obscure how good they are. So you're kind of just having to guess at how good he actually is. And George Springer, I think, is a perfect example of that. So with those kinds of players, what I tend to do in my rankings is find the place at the player's position where it's like I like to kind of slot them in between tiers so that if you get the good scenario, great, like you didn't give up anything. What am I trying to say? If you get the good scenario from the player, it's great. Like there was a drop off coming anyway, but if you get the bad scenario, you didn't give up another player who could produce similarly. And so for me, that's pretty early in the outfield rankings for George Springer. Like, I don't think anyone in the fantasy baseball space is going to say for George Springer, yes, I think he can do what he did again last year. And I think that's how the conversation is generally going to go with George Springer. Do you think he can do it again? Well, the answer reflexively should be no, because he just had arguably his career season at age 30. What is it? 37?
He was 35 for most of the season. I think he turned 36 in September or something.
Okay. So he's in the late 30s now, and he just had his career season or close to it. After a couple years where it looked like he had dropped off, he looked like he was on the verge of becoming irrelevant in fantasy. So it's not just the age alone, which would be reason enough to scare people away, but the trend he was on. So for me, it's okay. Yeah, he's definitely not going to do what he did against last year. That just seems like you're betting on lightning to strike twice. But it also seems far-fetched to me that he's just going to revert to what he was in 2024. So where within that range of outcomes where he was the number 8 outfielder, you said, and I think it was like top 5 on a per-game basis.
He was the 11th best player in Roto and the tied for 6th best hitter in head-to-head points per game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
between that versus unstartable, borderline unrosterable, and that's a wide range of outcomes. Yeah. I'm going to give you a kind of a bonus detail here for each of these where I view myself as being more on the optimistic side or the pessimistic side. For Springer, I'm more on the optimistic side because while it was his best year in a while, maybe his best year ever, obviously he has a long track record of all-star caliber production. And if he figured out a way to channel that again after a couple years of being lost in the weeds, I think it's easier to buy it just given his pedigree and track record. The age concerns me, but I also recognize that for hitters especially, the age variable has made for some huge bargains in recent years. People just afraid to draft the old guy, and he goes on to put up monster numbers still. I think that especially with hitters, we've seen a lot of that. So I have Springer ranked pretty high, but
Where'd you end up with him?
among outfielders or overall?
Either. Both.
I have him 13th in the outfield in
Okay.
Roto, and I have him, this is going to probably sound kind of nutty, 57th overall.
I have him 72nd overall, 18th at outfield. One of the outfielders is a catcher ranked ahead of him, so Hunter Goodman, you can throw that up. But that was also with me consciously moving him down, wanting to not be 50 picks ahead of ADP, which is
Right.
like, because his ADP is just crazy low.
Yeah.
There's just not very much faith that what he did last year was real. And I don't think it was like real in that I wouldn't expect him to do it again, but there's nothing about it that looked fluky, except that he hadn't done it before last season.
Yeah.
ADP the last 2 weeks for Springer is 104 as the 23rd outfielder off the board. I have him outfielder 20, so a little bit lower than you guys, as the 91st overall player in my rankings. Chris, let's go over to you. A tough player for you to rank, tough player, I think, for everybody to rank. That will be a pretty consistent theme, I think. Zack Wheeler, when healthy, one of the 3-4 best pitchers in all of baseball, but he's coming back from a major surgery. He first had a blood clot removed from his right shoulder, then thoracic outlet decompression surgery, which is different than the usual thoracic outlet surgery that we talk about with pitchers. Latest update came a few days ago. Phillies trainers say Wheeler is doing very well. He's throwing out to 75 feet so far. Honestly, Chris, we just don't know. This situation is completely up in the air. He could show up to spring training, look like himself, be ready for opening day. He could return in June. He could maybe never pitch again.
Never pitch again.
All of those things are in the range of outcomes here. So good luck ranking him.
Yeah, when we had on Monday, we had the big Spencer Strider discussion. Scott, did we discuss Spencer Strider on Tuesday's podcast as well?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, we did.
Yes, we did.
Talked a lot about Spencer Strider the last couple of days. And one thing I kept wanting to bring up and never had the chance was like,
We're going to talk about him again if we
Would you
get to all
rather
the
take-
players.
well, but would you rather take the flyer on Spencer Strider or Zack Wheeler?
Relative to cost, I probably Wheeler.
Oh, the cost is Wheeler is 40 picks cheaper in ADP. That's an easy call.
Yeah.
For now, I think if Wheeler's pitching in spring training games and he looks decent, it'll go up a lot. But that's probably also true of Spencer Strider.
Yeah, I think it's
So-
more true with Zack Wheeler because there
Yes.
aren't performance questions about him. I guess maybe there could be some new ones just given the nature of the injury, but we've talked about how his specific thoracic outlet surgery is the less risky one. So I thought about Wheeler for this exercise too. I ultimately decided not to because it seems hard to rank him now. I don't think it's going to be hard in March.
Yeah. No, that's fair because we're just dealing with a deficit of information right now.
Yeah.
And if you're drafting right now, I think you look at that 140 ADP, and that's probably like SP 40, I would guess. That just feels worth taking the risk. Like there are a couple of pitchers who have a cheaper cost right now that I like a little more. I'm shocked at how cheap Trevor Rogers is. I thought
Yeah.
I have him like 33rd, and I thought I was being
Yeah.
pretty
I have him
cautious.
30th. Me too. The guy had a sub 2 ERA. Okay, well, I have questions
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, I've got a lot
I'll
of
rank him
questions.
30th, but he's going more like 50th.
He was a top 10 pitcher last year, I'm pretty sure. Trevor Rogers in fantasy.
I think so. Chris, where did you wind up ranking Zack Wheeler for now?
36. So, or 34, one spot ahead of Spencer Strider. That's why I kept, every time we had this discussion, I kept looking at Spencer Strider and I was like, well, there's another guy right next to him that I have just as big concerns about. I don't know. I genuinely have no idea. I think I've been trying to look at some like actual scientific research that's been done on thoracic outlet syndrome, looking at like, not just, well, I remember Matt Harvey had thoracic outlet syndrome and it ruined his career. Like, that doesn't really help. You got to take the whole sample of whatever, 30 pitchers or whatever it is that have had this surgery in Major League history. And the results aren't as bad as you think, or at least as I think we all tend to think. The return to play is like 75% of pitchers who have this return to play. They tend to be older, so I think that's also part of why a lot of guys seem to, like Josh Beckett, I think the end of his career coincided with thoracic outlet surgery, but like that might have just been the end of his career anyway, you know?
Yeah. I actually wrote an article about this when Harvey was coming back from surgery because people were saying he's done.
Yeah.
And I was sticking up for Matt Harvey by pointing out exactly what you're saying.
And Matt Harvey was done, it turned out, but
yeah, so I feel a little bit burned by that. But Matt Harvey's was the nerve relocation, while Zack Wheeler's is the blood vessel.
And Harvey had already, I think, started to regress. Wheeler was arguably the best we ever seen of him last year. Now he is 35. I think my default is he's probably more done than he's not. But if he's not, and he's a top 10 pitcher again, I want to have some exposure to that. So he's an incredibly difficult player to rank, but I am willing to take that risk.
Well, like you just said, Chris, if Zack Wheeler is done, it's not because of anything he showed us before the surgery.
Yep.
It's caused by the surgery, right? He's done because he's just not the same pitcher he was before. And that's totally within the range of outcomes. We don't know that right now. We just have to wait until spring training and see what he looks like. Another pitcher who has probably been the hardest player for me to rank so far is Cole Ragans. This is, again, the starting pitcher that's probably given me the most trouble. I wouldn't blame you if you had him ranked as your SP4. I wouldn't blame you if you had him ranked as your SP34 because I think there is a lot of risk here, but also a ton of upside. 4.67 ERA last year, blah, blah, blah. Skills were insane. If you look at each of the ERA estimators, it was below 2.7. His 30% K- walk rate was first among starting pitchers with at least 60 innings pitched. That's the problem. He only threw 61 and 2/3 innings. So he missed over 3 months with a strained rotator cuff. He has a history of elbow injuries as well. Depending on who you ask, 2 Tommy John surgeries, 1.5 Tommy John surgeries. He has had surgeries on his elbow. I wound up with Cole Ragans as my SP13, 50th overall, but I think he is a huge risk-reward proposition right now. His ADP over the last 2 weeks is the SP12, 51.6 overall. Where are you guys at on Cole Ragans?
I am apparently lower on Cole Ragans than the consensus, which I did not expect because he's 13 for me. And you said he's 12?
We're both spot on, yeah.
I would
12 for me. 12 for
Max
me.
Fried is probably the one that I have ahead of him that the ADP has behind.
I also have Fried ahead. So
Yeah.
Which that they're back to back in the overall rankings, 44 and 45. So if you want to take Ragans ahead of Fried, I have no problem with that. There's certainly more upside with Cole Ragans, and the thing that's tough with him with the injuries is he had double Tommy John surgery, but it's not Shane McClanahan's double Tommy John surgery. Shane McClanahan had Tommy John surgery when he was a prospect, then pitched for 4 years, and then had Tommy John surgery again.
Well, I mean, the other, to me, it's, unless you're just questioning durability and the likelihood of him having another elbow issue. Like, he's already come back from the double Tommy John surgery and been better than ever.
But also, it's the second Tommy John surgery that he had was because the first one didn't take. Yeah. It wasn't like he broke down again. It was just the surgery didn't go right.
It was fixing the first
Yeah.
one.
Since then, he's just had this shoulder thing last season, which
Rotator cuff for a
that's
pitcher.
not, look,
is
it's not
pretty scary.
nothing,
Yeah.
but we did see him come back.
Yep.
And he was unbelievable. It was 2 or 3 starts at the end of the season, but I think didn't he have one that was like 9 or 10 strikeouts in 4 innings? He had like a couple of crazy big starts.
He had double-digit strikeouts in 5 of 13 starts.
He was just
His 13 starts last year, 14.3 K per 9.
yeah. He was yeah. He had a 10
That's-
strikeout in 5 innings and then 8 and 4. He made 3 starts in September. We saw him come back and look like himself. So I can't say he's going to be healthy. But what I can say relative to other pitchers with injury concerns or coming back from injuries or whatever is this is a different situation than Sandy Alcantara last season. You know, like we didn't know what Sandy Alcantara was going to look like. This is more like Jacob deGrom last year, where the only question is, can he stay healthy?
Can he hold up, basically?
But there is no question that he is an elite pitcher, one of the handful of best pitchers in baseball. So I'm ranking him pretty aggressively. I'd be happy to end up with Cole Ragans on my teams, acknowledging that there's a lot of risk there.
There's a lot of risk for a lot of the aces. And, you know, just part of what makes me not want to put him in the injury prone categories, it was just 2 years ago he threw 186 innings. Like he took on an ace workload, did Cole Ragans. And so I actually, and this is not just me, you're right to be, I'm not trying to dismiss your feelings about Cole Ragans, Frank, but I'm just offering a contrasting view here. I don't find Cole Ragans to be difficult to rank at all. I want to rank him as high as I can while still having him behind what I consider to be the surefire slam dunk aces. Just
But I
right
I
at the
think
end of that group, I'm slotting Cole Ragans.
I think he's the end of that second tier that we've talked a lot about. I think, you know, that like any one of those guys, I would look at you sideways if you put Max Fried as your number 4 SP. There's a different risk reward calculation going on with Fried than the rest of that group, but basically that whole group from SP4 to SP13 for me, there's very little difference between
I'll
them.
take
There
Ragans as my ace if it comes to it. Like
Yeah,
he's ranked the last of it, but I'd take him as my ace.
there are 10 of them separated by 16 spots in my overall rankings right now. That's how close I view that group of pitchers.
And again, we say this often, but when it comes to taking on risk, whether you consider Ragans risky or not, I personally do, more likely to do it in a shallower league than not. So if you play in a 10-team league, 12-team points league, whatever it might be, I'm more likely to do it there. 15-team roto, I think you got to be a little bit more prudent. I don't think you want your top 2 pitchers to be Cole Ragans and Hunter Green, let's say. That might be a little bit too risky in a league that deep. Scott, let's go back over to you and Dylan Cease. Oh, man, we spoke about him with Nick Pollock. Cease is quite the... He is a roller coaster. We know that. He is immensely talented. He racks up the strikeouts. He's been very durable thus far. But Scott, his yearly inconsistency, it is infuriating.
And the thing is, if you're like breaking him down as the ways we traditionally evaluate pitchers these days, like how talented is Dylan Cease? That doesn't fluctuate. Like he seems like the same guy. It's just the results are so radically different. Like he has a certain amount of variance baked into that profile, and we've seen the full extent of it over the past 4 years. And it's one of those players, one of those situations where you don't actually know what you're getting. And okay, he's been durable, but I don't really trust that with any starting pitcher. So like this could be the year he's not durable. I don't want to just depend on that.
And in his case, Scott, it could be bad durability, right? Like he makes all his starts, but he gives you a 4.50 ERA. That's pretty bad.
Yeah. So he's the kind of pitcher, Dylan Cease. Maybe you're getting an ace. Maybe you're getting somebody who you don't even want in your lineup, as was the case last year. I mean, he averaged his head-to-head points per game, Dylan Cease, last year was less than 10. Like that's waiver fodder, you know? Yeah. And And I don't think he's changed as a pitcher. You and I looked at this around the time he signed with the Blue Jays, Frank, how much his success has been tied to BABIP. And so now that he's with the Blue Jays, that should help. That should help.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should see the BABIP closer to the lower end. But I don't entirely trust that's the reason for Dylan Cease's struggles. I think it's a contributing factor, but I don't entirely trust it because so much of it is him defeating himself with walks and inefficiency. And the great years he's had with the low BABIP, it was kind of a ridiculously low BABIP that I'm not sure, even with a good defensive behind him, you can count on it being repeated. So I have Dylan Cease kind of in that same range as Spencer Strider, who we're going to get to soon, I think.
Oh, I would much rather have Dylan Cease than Spencer Strider.
Yes. I have Dylan Cease ahead of Strider, but it's in the same range where it's like, I don't really know what I'm getting, but the upside could be great. And if he flops here, I don't think the pitchers are ranked behind him are going to be aces. So that's about 30th in my starting pitcher rankings.
I've got him 17th. The key distinction between Cease and Spencer Strider. I'm very confident Dylan Cease can go out with the same stuff he had last year and be a good pitcher. Like, I don't think Dylan Cease needs to change. I think Spencer Strider, if Spencer Strider's the same guy he was last year, he is probably going to suck. Pardon my French. I don't think Spencer Strider was a viable major league pitcher last season. Dylan Cease clearly was. Like, things went wrong for him, and maybe that was his own, maybe it was, he unraveled with runners on base or whatever the explanation is. I think he was a major league caliber pitcher last season, and he just needs things to go right for him. Spencer Strider needs to overhaul his approach.
I think you're being you don't think Spencer Strider should have been pitching in the majors last year?
Oh, I think it was very much worth Spencer Strider being in the Braves rotation, especially because they had nothing to pitch for, or play for. But if the Braves got to October last year and Spencer Strider pitched the way he did, that's not one of your 3 playoff starters.
Well, that's a different.
But
that's a different standard. You're moving the goalposts here now.
Sure, but it's not 100% clear that guy deserves to be on a playoff roster the way he was pitching last year, especially down the stretch. It cannot be overstated how bad he was. He had a 4.95 ERA and a 1.62 WHIP in the second half last season.
2.50 ERA over his final 6 starts.
But it was kind of fool's gold.
Yeah, 26 strikeouts to 13 walks in 29 innings.
It wasn't Strider's usual strikeout rate, but he had an 8 strikeout game in there. He had a couple 6 strikeout games in there. I'll have more to say about Strider later. I had plenty to say about him yesterday. I just think the way you were framing that was a little unfair. I agree with the general point you're making that Cease has been basically this, as I said, Cease has been basically the same guy, just with different results. Yeah. Strider was a different guy last year. And so which is easier to come back from? Probably Cease. I rank Cease higher. It's just that Cease being the same guy has he was, I'm going to guess in head-to-head points per game, he was worse than Strider last year. And which of the two had the lower ERA last year? It was Strider. So, Cease was bad.
Technically
Cease was actually bad last year.
Yeah, but the skills indicate, the ERA was bad. Yeah. You are correct to say that the ERA was bad.
I'm just saying results.
Everything else was very good.
But the stuff and the pitch characteristics much favor Dylan Cease.
Yeah, that's always been.
And the underlying stuff was still great. The peripherals were the 3.46 xERA. There is no indication that Dylan Cease has lost anything. And so I'm entering this season, especially seeing a team give him a $210 million contract. I'm buying Dylan Cease. I'm happy with him as my SP2 this year.
Yeah.
His ADP over the last 2 weeks, Dylan Cease, SP19 as the 79th overall player. So, Chris, you're just ahead of that. Sounds like you will have a real chance to get him. I have him at SP21. I know that we tell people not to do this. I had Dylan Cease in a lot of spots last year, and it's you know how I got these scars? Like, oh man,
Yeah.
Dylan Cease, he hurt me, man. But I'm trying to look past that. I think I could see myself winding up with him on a few teams again this season. Let's take our final break, and when we return, back into tough players to rank. How many will we get to? I don't know. Let's see.
When you need your sports news all the time,
We've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
All right, here we go. 15, 20 minutes left. Rapid fire. Let's see how many of these names we can get to. Chris, you are up next. James Wood, massive talent, literally. It was a tale of two halves. Completely fell off in the second half of last season, and now we're left trying to figure out what happens next. Where did you rank him?
I ranked James Wood as my number 10 outfielder.
You're right in line with ADP. All right, let's move on.
30th overall, but man, I do not feel good about any of that because he was unplayably bad in the second half. I'm surprised the OPS ended up at 690. I think he hit like a couple of home runs over the final like 10 games of the season, I think, to kind of salvage it, if I'm remembering correctly. But he was awful in the second half. 39% strikeout rate. The whiff rates were out of control. He wasn't. It's not like he was doing anything to make up for it. He still isn't optimized for power. That was a scary thing to witness for a guy who is as talented as James Wood. Yeah, he had 4 home runs in the final 5 games of the season. He had 5 in September overall. So, yeah, I believe in the talent, but there are now significant performance concerns based on what we saw in the second half. And he's just not – is he not a base stealer? He's just not like a big contributor in stolen bases now. I like that is also very concerning.
Pretty good.
15's fine, but it's not enough to overcome being a 40% strikeout rate guy. You know, like that's what I'm saying is that
who he is now. Yeah.
And I don't think it is, but like we have having seen a tangible instance of James Wood being an unplayable hitter. He needs to have a lot of upside as a base stealer, I think, to overcome that. I think there's a real chance of anyone in the top 50. I think James Wood has the most non-injury, this guy's just not useful potential. Because even Pete Crow-Armstrong, who I think will probably end up being a worse hitter than James Wood overall, even Pete Crow-Armstrong should steal 30-plus bases. I can't say that about James Wood. So there's a lot of question marks for a guy inside the top 30.
The ADP over the last 2 weeks for James Wood, he is the 10th outfielder off the board, 33rd overall. I basically have him right in line with that in my rankings. It's a kind of a weird spot in the outfield rankings. He goes back-to-back with Pete Crow-Armstrong. It's kind of like the dividing line between like the elite superstar outfielders, and then we start to get into a bunch of those names that have questions too. So
the ones we thought we were elite for part of last year, and that's I actually ranked George Springer right behind those because it's different reasons, but the concern level is similar. And honestly, Byron Buxton is right there too. I don't have him as one of my 5 toughest to rank, but he is similarly tough to rank for the incredibly high upside, but also severe concerns.
Next one up for me is a player I loved last year. Actually put a bet out on him to win the National League Cy Young. That was Spencer Schwellenbach. He was doing the thing. The breakout was happening, a 3.09 ERA, 0.97 whip. He had a quality start in 13 of 17 outings. He was incredibly consistent. Then diagnosed with a fractured right elbow in early July, which ended his season. That came in conjunction with a velocity bump. If the Braves were competing, there is a chance that he could have returned later in the season, but they chose to kind of hold him off. As of November, he was pain-free. He's expected to be ready for spring training. But this is just another one where I need to see more. I need to see what he looks like coming back from this elbow fracture. Will there be a velocity drop? Will the stuff suffer because the velocity is down a little bit? So obviously I loved him last year. I think the control is amazing and all that. I just kind of want to see what he looks like and where the velocity is at this spring. I have him as my SP23. It's kind of a stay away for now. Last 2 weeks, the ADP is SP22. So I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm not far enough behind. Maybe I need to drop him down a little bit. Do you guys have any thoughts on Schwellenbach?
I've got him SP16.
Ow.
Yeah, I'm closer to Chris.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm overreacting to a fractured elbow, but
I get it. I mean, I made this point for Jacob deGrom about him just reaching a level of velocity that his biology couldn't live up to, and that's why it kept breaking. And we saw the velocity jump from Schwellenbach. He actually pointed it out himself that he thought he was throwing too hard, and that's a usage injury, a stress fracture. So I think the concerns are reasonable. It's just A, he's identified the problem himself, and B, we saw he was really great with the lesser velocity as a rookie in 2024. So if he follows through on what he says, and it stands to reason he'll be just as good as 2024, and that performance in 2024 is why we were so high on Schwellenbach heading into 2025. So I don't think he needs the higher velocity. Long story short.
that is fair.
The fractured elbow is one that I just also have no idea what to make of.
I feel like we don't have a huge sample size of this, but I believe Michael King
Michael
fractured his
King
elbow back in the day
when he was a reliever.
Yeah, and that freaked me out too. Yeah,
Corey Kluber, but I think he got hit by a line
it wasn't
drive.
a stress one. Yeah, not a stress fracture.
Ryan Thompson, Wasker Inoue, Brent Honeywell. There's not a lot. Apparently Ryan Helsley had it in 2021.
I mean, he came back and looked really good, but that's also a reliever. So
yeah, I don't know. I love the skills. The thing that's always so hard with the velocity stuff is if Spencer Schwellenbach comes back next season and is averaging 95.5 miles per hour with his fastball, which would be lower than he was in 2024. Is that intentional, or is that how hard he throws now? We need a quote from him to say, I'm dialing it back intentionally.
Well, we've already kind of gotten that quote to a degree, but
it's hard not to go all the way.
Yeah.
Like every incentive for pitchers is to go max effort. And so I assume he can still be effective. I'm getting a little queasy about that ranking.
yeah, I mean that's where I was at too.
Yeah.
So it's like, as your SP2, I don't really want to take on that much risk that early in the draft. So, but again, I could be convinced if he comes out in spring, and even if the velocity's down, like Scott said, if he looks like the pitcher he was back in 2024, I'm probably just right back on the Schwellenbach bandwagon there. Let's stick with the Braves, Scott. We talked a lot about Strider. I think we already kind of made the points today. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add or mention where you actually have him ranked, but
yeah, to me, he is the single hardest pitcher to rank because it's really it's a hope. You're just hoping, and I think it's reasonable to hope. Obviously, he was coming back from a significant elbow injury last year. I made the point on the last podcast that this is a really determined guy who is into the biomechanics and just has as good of a grasp of how to maximize his as maybe any pitcher in baseball. And, he was hitting the pitching labs mid-season trying to sort it out. I'm not sure that's enough time. So I think it's reasonable to have hope. But it may just be a waste to pick. And so how early are you willing to live with that? You may have one of, if not the top strikeout pitcher in baseball, or you may waste the pick. And to me, it's a similar calculation with Dylan Cease, though I think maybe the highest end outcome and the lowest end outcome are more extreme in Strider's case. But it's a similar calculation, and so I have them ranked similarly. It's a little outside the top 30. And look, if nobody else was drafting him that high, I'd be willing to move him down. I'm not saying I'm eager to draft Spencer Strider, but I'm actually a little behind consensus right now. So Am I on the optimistic side or the pessimistic side? Well, if you compare me to Nick Pollock, I guess I'm on the optimistic side for Strider. But I think I'm right in the middle. I think I'm right with everybody else, and concern / hopefulness for Strider. And 2026 will be the most crucial year of his career. I think it's fair to say.
And his ADP over the last 2 weeks for Strider, it's 105 overall. The SP 27 off the board.
That's way too high.
Yeah, it's a stay away for me for now. I have him SP 31. I feel like I need to lower him. I think it's going to be closer to like SP 40 or something. And another one where it's kind of fluid, and I'm open to being wrong or changing this ranking if he shows up in spring and either velocity is up, shape on the fastball looks better, there's a legitimate third pitch that looks really, really good, or whatever we learn. I need to learn something. So
I mean, we're not going to learn much because the Braves spring training facility, I don't think has what's it called? Statcast.
That's not great. So
yeah,
I don't know. We'll have
this has changed since the last, unless they just added it, but they haven't historically.
Well, we'll be reading the quotes and paying very close attention to Spencer Strider when he's pitching. Chris, another name here for you is Jarren Duran, who regressed across the board last season. Strikeouts went up a little bit, got worse against lefties. He actually hit the ball harder than ever before. Looks like he was trying maybe too hard to hit for power. He raised the launch angle. I just don't know if that's the player that Jarren Duran should try to be. But we know he can be a dynamic player. He was the 11th overall player just 2 years ago. Where do you have Jarren Duran ranked right now?
Yeah, the thing with Jarren Duran is he did some of the things that we want hitters to do. I'm just not sure those are the things we want this specific hitter on this specific team to do.
In Fenway Park, right?
In Fenway Park, it's arguably the hardest park in baseball for left-handed power. I have him 20th at outfielder. I have him 81st overall, so a little bit behind consensus, although I have George Springer ahead of him. I have Seiya Suzuki ahead of him. There are a handful of outfielders I like more who are cheaper, so it's pretty unlikely I'm going to draft Jarren Duran. I also just have some performance concerns. With the changes he made, he became more pull heavy, more fly ball heavy. That's not really what you want as a left-handed hitter in Fenway Park, unless you can just really Isaac Paredes that thing right around that pole in right field. But otherwise, it is super deep.
And for his skill set too, Chris, we want more line drives and ground balls. We just want him on base so he can give us 30+ steals, right?
I also just is there playing time concern here?
I was wondering that, but do they have enough righties on the bench where they could platoon?
Yeah, that's I guess the thing. But he's a pretty bad defensive outfielder. He's already old. He's 29 already. So
he's so old.
Well, I mean,
oh my gosh.
For a young,
he's older than we would think. Yes.
For a guy who is viewed as up and coming.
He's not up and coming. He's in his prime. He was a 5-win player last year.
He's firmly in his prime. But he's right on that. I don't know if we can play him against lefties.
He was a 5-win player last year. He was a 9-win player 2 years ago.
That's weird. I'm not sure I get how
he was a 5-win player last year.
Yeah, that feels
baseball reference.
Yeah. I was about to say, as a bad,
I don't know. I just
4.7 technically. I'm rounding to the nearest whole win.
Yeah, I mean that's close enough.
Yeah. And also just late debut, late peak players tend to also have shorter peaks.
Mm-hmm.
This will be his third year or third full year, fourth full year, I guess. So I don't know. I think he's fine, but he scares me a little bit.
I regret drafting Jarren Duran where I did last year. I feel like I should have known better.
Yeah.
But I think if you draft him according to his 2025 production, you're going to come out just fine.
I think that's probably fine. Yeah.
His ADP the last 2 weeks, Jarren Duran is 78.6 as the 16th outfielder off the board. I have him just one spot higher in the outfield rankings. I think I am willing to take the plunge here on Jarren Duran. I worry a little bit about the lefty stuff, but that's always been a problem for him, and they have always played him against lefties. I don't know that they can platoon everybody. So they've got Willie Abreu, who needs a platoon. Also, Resource says Marcelo Meyer is going to need a platoon. So I guess they can't platoon everybody. So I think it's mostly safe with Jarren Duran, but I get what you're saying, Chris. Last name we'll talk about here for me is Jackson Merrill. I mean, much like Jarren Duran, he regressed last year after that breakout 2024. Merrill had the injury excuses, hamstring, concussion, ankle. He did finish very strong, final 19 games, hit 308, 7 home runs, OPS over 1,000, great exit velocities. Did I do something, Chris?
No, I'm sorry. I have the college football game on, and the UM quarterback just ran into his offensive lineman's butt and fell down.
Oh, Mark Sanchez, you never.
He didn't fumble at least, but it was very funny. I'm sorry.
The U, yeah. Jackson Merrill, by the way, I was saying he finished very strong last season. He also had just 1 stolen base after 16 the year prior. Was that because of the leg injuries, hamstring and ankle? It's hard to say for sure. I think he's a bit of a confusing player. Maybe I'm overthinking it. He's obviously still young, and the team likes him a lot. Last 2 weeks, his ADP is 73 as the 14th outfielder off the board. I have him at that same exact spot in my outfield rankings, and I have him higher in the overall. So I guess I should be in. But do you guys have any strong thoughts about Jackson Merrill?
I'm definitely the low guy on Jackson Merrill. I think there isn't enough history of success there for us to just assume 2024 is the default, given how much he lost last year, especially like if he's not a base stealer, that's a big knock against him, particularly at this position. So I based on where I rank him relative to everyone else who just seems completely willing to dismiss 2025 as just a fluke that happened. Maybe it was, but I only have 1 year to refer to. I understand he was a big prospect before that, but he wasn't a very productive prospect, So, I just don't feel like I have a good enough grasp who Jackson Merrill is to invest in him like a top 15 or even top 20 outfielder.
I do think it's worth noting he's going 40 picks later than he did last year.
It's very similar to Jarren Duran. They don't have the same skill set, but in terms of where they went last year and where they've dropped to this year.
For me, it's just I'll take the blue chip prospect who has shown, especially because he was hitting like 304 when he had his concussion. I think he was hitting 304 with like an 800 OPS. He had the concussion. He's bad for about 2 months. September, he's awesome again. I can't say for sure that it was just the concussion, but it feels pretty likely. That's a good excuse at the very least for a player this young, this talented, the physical tools, the swing is still great. I have Jackson Merrill as my 13th outfielder. So I've got him right in that Roman Anthony, Wyatt Langford group. They're grouped all together for me.
Yeah, I kind of have this mini tier, which is similar of Jarren Duran, Roman Anthony, and Jackson Merrill. It's just kind of that, right around 60th overall, right around 15th outfielder. And I think they're all really, really talented players. I lean towards closer to what you're saying, Chris. I think he was derailed by injury last year. I just don't want to forget how impressed we were by Jackson Merrill just 2 years ago while learning a new position, and he was great defensively, and he had complete control of the zone and just his ability to hit line drives and not strike out. It was really, really impressive what he did as a rookie, and I think we can get closer to that player this upcoming season in 2026. We are going to wrap there, but we still have a bunch of other names. We'll have an FBT Express episode where we will cover the names that we didn't get to here on this podcast. So if you want to hear more about some tough rankings, make sure to check out our FBT Express episode. We're going to wrap there. For Scott, Chris, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning into Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and we will be back again next week. Bye-bye.